But I should probably turn this around and ask you, are you choosing yourself?
Recently, I would say yes, but this wasn't always the case.
And I said choosing myself. And they were just like, they were just telling me, okay, I expected a kind of surfing story where you're almost eaten by a shark and now you're saying this. But in the context of what you shared, we can understand the depth of that, and we can understand that this is actually a really, really brave choice. Okay, Lisa, you're safe right now. Take a breath. So kind of parent myself. Or do a breath exercise, which is also a way of me parenting myself. Me being there for myself, me choosing myself. It's a constant exploration and research for me. But in one word, it's love.
Am I chosen?
Yes, you are chosen. But I should probably turn this around and ask you, are you choosing yourself?
Recently, I would say yes, but this wasn't always the case. I know myself, and I had times where I wasn't choosing myself and doing the complete opposite, distracting myself to a point where I was on a crossroad between, will I continue forever having a miserable life and even miserabler, or do I choose to be better and expand my being? And thankfully, in the crossroad, I decided to the last one, so I did the last one, and now I'm here having an amazing conversation with you.
Congratulations for this. That's a big achievement, I feel. It's a big thing to choose yourself. I remember that yesterday someone asked me what was the most exciting or bravest thing you've ever done. And I said choosing myself. They were just like, they were just telling me, okay, I expected a kind of surfing story where you're almost eaten by a shark and now you're saying this. But in the context of what you shared, we can understand the depth of that, and we can understand that this is actually a really, really brave choice. And it also comes with painful decisions that seem painful first, but then they're beautiful. As I said in another interview, it seems empty and it seems a little bit lonely in the beginning to choose yourself, because that means you're choosing you, you're choosing your values, your standards, you're choosing your future self, the life you want to live, which will automatically mean that there will be an echo towards situations that you cannot longer tolerate and people you cannot longer tolerate. And I think there's somehow a cleansing out of your life. So there's a phase when it's going to be very empty, and then slowly, the right connections and the right environments are going to fill up these spaces. But I also learned that actually it's really good to have those empty spaces and to get comfortable with those, which can be very, very challenging. Also, when we talk about the nervous system, because then we also are challenged to regulate ourselves.
Yeah. And this lonely chapter that you mentioned, I'm always a person, or I always was a person who is okay to be lonely, is okay to sit alone with themselves. But I know a lot of people probably listening who aren't like that, who always need someone besides them, or who always need something their focus and their mind is shifted towards except themselves. So what would you say to these people?
First of all, that I would invite them, become aware when you regulate with others. So become aware of those moments, of those choices. There's trauma and there's awareness, right? So that's the opposite. The opposite of trauma is awareness. So I would invite these people, become conscious, become aware of the moment when you want to regulate with someone, and you go and do it. And you could also choose something else. So you could choose to go for a walk with yourself, to do some breath work. You could choose to talk to yourself, say affirmations. But there's this choice, and almost feels like a habit more than a choice to go towards this person and regulate with them. So I would say bring awareness in your regulation first and see how you're regulating and with whom and why. And always also with the question, because that's kind of the direction codependency when that happens without being aware of that, right? Then we're in a very codependent environment. And just ask yourself, does it serve you? Because often when we regulate with others, I made that experience myself, that in moments where I'm troubled, challenged, I used to want to regulate with people, but then often the people didn't give me what I needed. And then you're disappointed, and there's this kind of spiral, this you can call it like hell spiral, a dark spiral, where you're like, well, they disappointed me. But when you turn it around, you could also say, they said no to you using them for regulating without asking them for permission, right? So, and I think if we can be in a space where we're actually so aware about how we're regulating, that makes a person so safe. They feel so safe with you because you're like, oh, wow, you're aware of how you're regulating. And I used to be a person that when I feel safe with someone or when I chose to be with a person or friendship, if I would need to cry, I would just run over crying or call them and be like, oh, I'm so upset. I was very unaware in my choices in this way, and a lot needed to shift to understand I can regulate myself, and then it's always successful. So I manage to regulate myself too because I know how I can give myself what I need.
And you said that it all starts with awareness and that it's the opposite of trauma. How would you define through these two things, and how can I build this awareness even more? Because you mentioned so many shifts in your life happening because of that, and this process of regulation. How would you say does it look like? Can you maybe explain a little bit, maybe even tell a story that describes it pretty well?
Yeah, sure. Well, I can say that for myself, I used to call my mother a lot, right? When something was challenging. And my mother is amazing and I love her so much. But, well, she doesn't always have the time or that moment to regulate myself in the moment that I'm challenged. And often over the phone, it also doesn't work. Now you have to think that I've been living out of my parents' household since I'm 18, 19, right? So I've been living in different places in the world. I wasn't aware that I'm doing that. So whenever there was a problem, I kept doing it. And sometimes it wasn't successful because she wasn't maybe picking up because she was working or, she really had an appointment, had to leave. Often she was there for me and was listening. There's no judgment in that. But I just realized if I really want to regulate myself really much, I need to do it on the spot. And a coach of mine said to me, what if you have nothing? Imagine everything is taken away from you. You don't even have the possibility, worst case, to go outside and hug a tree or, put your hands on the earth. That's kind of things that I do, right? Or cuddle an animal. When I see animals, I connect to them, a cat or a dog. That regulates me. Same, I could ask the dog for consent on that, right? That's funny though. But they are more spiritual, so they really feel when you need to be regulated, and they're very open for that. So this coach asked me this, and that was inspiring to me because it was like, oh wow. Well, then I would need to talk to myself, tell myself, okay, Lisa, you're safe right now. Take a breath. So kind of parent myself or do a breath exercise, which is also a way of me parenting myself. Me being there for myself, me choosing myself. So that would be ways how it could look like. And I think the question really helps to ask yourself, how could I regulate myself if I couldn't go to the gym, if I couldn't hug a tree and just go outside and there's no nature? Because it also makes it easy for your brain to know, because then you will choose the easiest way, the most accessible way, instead of choosing something like going to the gym. And then it's like, well, but it's Sunday night and the gym is not open, or you know what I mean? You don't want to be in that situation when you really need to regulate yourself. It needs to be something that you can do ASAP, and something that you can give to yourself so you also experience confidence, you experience self-love.
That's so amazing how you at the end described it. And this reminds me a lot of the work I'm doing. So everything around phone addiction, it goes in a similar direction, that people often need this external stimuli and they can't even sit with themselves for even 5 minutes without checking anything. I was there and I'm genuinely happy that I got through it and regulated myself to a point where with a snap of a finger I can say, okay, I don't want to be distracted anymore and I want to sit with myself for the next 2 or 3 hours. So having this ability is so amazing, and I'm so grateful to went through it, experience it, and now being at a point where I can teach it to others.
There's also a lot of learning in that. And there, I'm going to be really honest with you. It's like the world is in many ways not working anymore. So we're human beings and we want to and need to relate. And we're actually wired to live in a tribe and live in a community. Now everything is so isolated. So the reason why we're going on the phone is often very simple. We're looking for connection, right? And we deserve that. And we're supposed to be connected. So on a deep compassionate level, I'm also very compassionate with that, because I'm saying that's our birthright. And now when we have to step out of our comfort zone so much, like I can share about that because, I lived in different countries, and you really have to step out of your comfort zone to make a connection because you don't have any friends yet, right? No one knows you. So you need to step into connections and be the first one to ask something or initiate something or make eye contact, all this is out of the comfort zone. But most people that they have built these things, or they're born in a city, they're in a comfort zone. They have their little circles. And most people are, if you put it this way, honestly, their social battery and their battery of connecting and regulating is so low. So when they have a few people around them, they think like, I'm comfortable, I'm having a good life. And then the phone comes and it's like, yeah, I'm doing great. Because they don't understand that they need to really fill their battery. So I've been thinking a lot about, what are ways to do that allow me to also discover my freedom. So discover that I'm free of codependency, which is one of my exercises with myself. But I can take myself places. I can take myself in the nature. I can take myself to a concert. I have a lot of conversations in the train. I talk to people too. Like there was a child and his mother on Halloween. There was a woman with her dog. We talked about her dog, There was a pregnant woman. I talk to people. I tell myself, don't be on the phone. I take a journal along. Yeah, this is my practice. And I just stay. I look out for who needs me right now. And there's always someone who needs your help, like carrying a bag or giving your seat to a pregnant woman or something. And for me, it's just funny how people often even look at me shocked, like, oh, wow, she's so present in that space, and it's uncomfortable for them. It's like, why is she so present in that space where it's an anonymous space? And I'm like, no, because tribe and community is everywhere. So when I come home, I feel like, oh, wow, my cup is really full because I'm having deep conversations with people just randomly, right?
It's such an amazing thing to have, and thankfully recently, and this reminds me of something I will do soon, you go in a cafe and the one rule, and there's just one rule, is that you can't use your phone or your laptop. So you automatically journal, you read, and after that you create deep conversations. And this is a way I want to fill this gap, or you call it the baseline. I want to raise the baseline because recently my best friend moved cities to another city because of uni. So I wouldn't say that I'm lonely, but I definitely have lost a huge connection I had for a long while. And thankfully he will come back in a year, and we will of course go to each other once a while, but not having him for now 2 months really brought up a struggle.
Yeah.
It impacted me.
So now,
but
when
also
you look at that and you're saying, I'm not really lonely, what would happen if you say, I'm lonely? That would make people listen to you, and then you would get the attention and care that you need. So it's our ego that's like, oh yeah, I can't make myself that vulnerable and say like, I'm really lonely. And sometimes, like I do that also now that I practice really this vulnerability and saying like, hey, I feel a bit lonely now. Or, I don't call my mom to necessarily regulate because I have a problem, which I think she's really grateful for. But it's just like, I would love to chat with you. I would love to spend some quality time with you on the phone, So it also allows, when we're so honest and vulnerable, it allows people to connect, because everybody knows that feel of being lonely. And then that's the connection point where we can really tune in deeply. And something you said, and I don't know about this, but I'm going to be a little bit the devil here, because what I'm observing a lot, there's a time left and all here, a meet up in cities and all this stuff and like some kind of membership clubs. And you know, my reflection about that was very clear. It's like, so now we need those clubs that we pay to, so they do this effort for us that's so uncomfortable for us to make this extra step to connect. So instead of me asking people in a fitness studio, hey, I think you're interesting, let's go for a coffee, right? Which I do, which happens to me and which I do. And I love the idea of these concepts and the way that I promote it and I looked into it, but I can't sign into that because it's taking my human ability to connect away. It's making me weak. And I don't want that. I want to be strong. I want to be capable to be in the uncomfortable, to do this step. And here's a difference between, so that comes back to what is your purpose in life? For example, I want to train myself in life. I want to be really good at navigating and living life. So I need to be able to move to another city, learn another language, reach out to people, make new friends, build a business in a different country. Because I think that's a skill. I think that's extremely powerful. And I will not ever sit anywhere and say, oh, I'm incapable. I can't live life. You know, if things get taken away from me or whatever, if something happens, I'm capable because I'm practicing that. Now you have to see that many people don't practice that. They're not aware of that. And they find themselves in so many codependencies, and they find themselves not willing to practice real life. Because I would go as far as say, to sign in an app and pay them to organize everything, then just come to a dinner or come to a meeting or whatever, right? Has nothing to do with that. So, and that brought me back to the question is, who's the person that I want to be today, right? And if I see the people on the phone like this, all of them in the train, then I have one thought. And it's like, I'm not going to be like them. That's my thought in the last weeks. Every time I see a person on the phone, it clicks in my mind and say, I'm not going to be like them. I don't want this for myself. I don't want to live like this. And I get rewarded all the time, as I told you, with beautiful connections and short conversations and smiles from children and hugs from dogs and, you know, these small but super magical things.
And funnily enough, yesterday I posted a post saying that recently I was on the bus and I was the only one reading and everyone else was on their phone, which just shows how unregulated so many people are, how they always need this one extra bit of, I call it dopamine, but I don't know how you are calling it, but they need it in order to live their life. And I describe this always as a dopamine baseline. So a lot of people have a very high dopamine baseline, means they need these lights, they need the scrolling, they need the social media in order to live a fulfilling life.
And
While
again,
in reality,
all of this is unaware, right? That happens non-aware. They're not aware of that, what you're describing here. And maybe they've heard of dopamine. And that's where I'm struggling judging people when they're not aware of something. I can still make a choice and say, I don't want to be like them, or I don't want to behave like that, or I don't want them in my inner circle. But I'm deeply struggling with judging someone who's not aware of something. And I would go as far as, can I have compassion for that person who seems to be deeply dysregulated right now and in need for the phone? And can I also, for example, express my boundaries, let's say, if they're listening to super loud music next to me and it's just like, hey, that doesn't work for me. But what I can do is, for example, just tune in for a moment with their nervous system or tune in with their presence and let them understand with a simple thought, it's safe to be here, you know? That's something you can do. It's like, send them a thought over if they're sitting next to you. And I get actually inspired by people who, like you, who read a book. And they also bring me back because, of course, it also happens to me. I feel like the phone is like this endless black hole that you can just like fall into. And then you fall out after like 5 minutes and like, whoa, what happened, right? Well, it's 10 minutes later. So I really get inspired by people like a man yesterday who was reading as the only person and who was actually having eye contact with me when I entered, which already it helps me also to stay present. If people look at me, they make eye contact, even if it's just very short. So I think the question could be more like, how can we support each other to stay present, be present, and become present, rather than they are like that and they are doing this. Let's just say they're not aware of it.
Yes, definitely. And funnily enough, people like, for example, my grandparents, they have what I call a low dopamine baseline. They are aware of these things, and their minds get totally overwhelmed once they see these, I would say, high dopamine signals, high dopamine activities. So what I did and what I teach everyone I genuinely care about is to just lower this baseline, lower it to a point where maybe you are even a grandma when you are 20, but at least you're living a life with awareness. And this is the point I'm now creating a bit of a connection between both of us.
Yeah.
This human part, you mentioned many times that on the bus, that you're seeing people's humanity, and that even an eye contact and the presence alone of someone else being present helped you. Can we now maybe talk a little bit more about that? Because I'm using the train almost every day, and I genuinely struggle to, I wouldn't say that I struggle to be present, but I struggle to make others feel this presence. How would you say can I make them feel that?
That's so beautiful, and that's such a vulnerable question, and I'm just grateful that you bring that up and that you're asking me this. I think first there needs to be an acknowledgement that there is something inside of you where you feel uncomfortable with yourself. So you're not 100% embodied right now, which is, there's no judgment for that, okay? And there's also something, you're uncomfortable with a part of your feelings that you're experiencing, and also with the reaction of your nervous system. Because if you would be comfortable, and I'm not saying that's going to be a nice journey to witness all of this and, start to actually be more aware of your nervous system, what's happening, and witnessing it a bit more, and also wanting to understand it and listen to it every moment and taking things very slow. That can actually be a game changer. So I would start for you with this, as simple as this. I invite yourself to make a non-negotiable contract with yourself, to never ignore your nervous system again. So your nervous system, whenever it remembers something from the past, it will go into reactions like, if it's something negative from the past, it will fight, fawn, freeze, right? Have these reactions. And you will feel that. You will feel that on different levels. You will start to have thoughts, for example, very negative thoughts. That's part of that. So sometimes it helped me to understand when I suddenly had really negative thoughts. Oh, this is not my thoughts. That's the thought of my nervous system. And I am not, in the core, I am not my nervous system. In the core, I am the soul of Lisa. I'm free. Now my nervous system is carrying experience from the past. So it can get into freeze and fight and fawn and all these things, which is challenging to experience. And then that can go on your thought level. You can feel shitty. It can even stop your vagus nerve from working, right? And then you get digestion problems. You can get headache, different things. You cannot breathe anymore that well. It can have so many different effects on so many different levels to your whole system. I would say the first invitation is just become aware of it, hold space for it, and invite yourself to parent yourself. So for me, that looked like the following. I totally ignored my nervous system. So I was a really warrior type. So no matter what, I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to do it anyways. And I had all sorts of reactions to this in my nervous system because, for my nervous system, not everything that I did, even if it was a normal thing, not everything felt safe to do. Even, let's say, talk to a stranger, my nervous system, no, don't do it, and went into fight and freeze, Whereas I really wanted to talk to a stranger, right? And make a new connection. So this awareness will change your life. It will change everything. But it needs to come with a love towards yourself. And that you can also simply practice by being super loving and compassionate towards others. So the the opposite of judgmental. So whenever someone is doing something or saying something that triggers you, that you want to label as negative or mean, see their struggle. Start to understand if they're maybe in a fight or freeze situation right now. Even, and that we have to use our brain a little bit, and that's the tricky part of it. The nervous system is wired on the past, so it will tell me, let's say like I get a letter and I have a anxiety about letters, comes from the past somewhere. So every time I get a letter, I panic. Understand? I have the wildest, like, threatening thoughts in my mind. And I need to calm my nervous system instead of what I used to do, be irritated by it, push it away, and almost, I would say, pat myself and say like, oh, this doesn't belong to me. It's happening, and I obviously experience it happening, and it feels like shit, but I'm not going to identify with it, I'm not going to take care of it, and it's not part of me. And you know how horrible that is, especially when other people are around and they like, Lisa, I know what's going on right now. I mean, you're really struggling, but you have so much resistance against your own struggling, and that makes it even stronger instead of starting to love your struggle, right? And what your nervous system or what your system is going through now based on the past experience. And I think, wow, just get so much compassion for that. And that's also coming back to understanding your history, understanding your parents' history, understanding their trauma, understanding the war, understanding, and that your national trauma of where you're born, where were your parents born? Where were they born?
My father was born in Turkey and my mother was born here in Germany.
Yeah. Where in Germany?
You know where Cologne is?
Yeah. So you got to understand that culture and that traumas and you know what happened there. Like in Germany, we had the East-West. My mother was growing up in the East. So your mother experienced the West, but she was still challenged by the East-West, for example. And her parents probably, they were in war, I guess. Her father? No. But that's something where you need to dig deeper and find out what happened there, because the war still happened, even if your grandfather doesn't participate in it, you know? So I think all this gave me so much ancestral knowledge to understand and be compassionate with people and myself.
No, that's so amazing. And this all reminded me of something I experienced this morning. So before this call, I said that the train I should take got cancelled, and there's this guy on a train. I see him almost every day, and I think he has a disability, but whenever things aren't great and whenever things are stressing him out, he expresses his feelings openly to a point where he shouts through the train and through the station. And today I had this inner thought of, okay, why I'm not going to him and calming him down, just giving him the ears or giving him the space to just talk out all of his stuff. But I wanted to do it, but at the same time there was this resistance. And I think that being aware of this resistance, which is, of my understanding, my nervous system being a little bit irregulated and still wired in the past, at the end made me not going to him and calming him down, which, thinking back of it now, is something I wish I had done, but at least I learned it, and at least I had the experience or this reflecting moment right now where I can say,
you had the thought,
I wish to be there.
You had the thought, and the next time something else is going to happen, but I want to bring you an alternative. So the first stage of this would be when he starts screaming, most people are just like closing off, and they're like energetically and like closing their heart and just closing their gaze, and like that's it, right? Protection. We can't judge them. We don't know what they've been through, where they're going, where they're coming from. Okay? No judgment. So for you, it would be step by step releasing the closed heart, releasing the energetic blockage, releasing the awareness blockage. So looking around him, at him, making eye contact, right? And then you could send some good thoughts to him. Let's start with that. Look at him, feel his energetic body, his nervous system, and send him a thought. I bless you. I bless your soul. And imagine, for example, that you cover him with a white blanket, like a golden sunlight that's just like cleansing all of the troubles. I think that because that's safe for you, because you don't know this person, you don't know how they're going to react when you come close. And it's still going to have an effect on him. And that's going to teach you a lot about how we're all connected. But that's, for example, what we're practicing also, what we practice a lot in acting, where you become very aware of your inner nose and your body nose, how you just block the body in your nonverbal language, but also how you have energetic nose, because in acting, we want to get on top of that, and then we can play the character where we know he has a closed heart or she has a closed heart, but a really open body. And this is what happens a lot in humans. They're really like, so nice to see you, and they open their arms, but their heart is closed, which is, again, none of their fault. You know what I mean? Responsibility to, if they want to change that. No one else can change that for them.
Definitely. And you brought up acting, which is something I would like to talk about as well. So I guess some of the people, so I will probably promote this as my podcast, a multi-award winning actor. But you are so much more than that, of course.
Yeah.
But what interests me is how acting inspired your work you're doing right now. Because I hear a lot of what you're saying, that regulating yourself, you're doing the same in acting. Or you basically are a totally different person on stage than you are probably off the stage, but you still have to perform and you still have or need this control of yourself to be this person. So can you maybe open up the gates to this actor mindset, actor practices?
I mean, the question is deep, because that's a very deep, complex process that we're diving into. And then it also depends. So everything that I'm going to say out of my own acting, and someone else is going to tell you something different about how they see acting.
Okay.
But for me, every time I embody a character, this is a color of me. And when I open myself up to the profession of the actor, I open myself up to experience all the colors that life has to give without judgment. It's like Maya Angelou. Do you know her? She's a poet.
I thought you said Michelangelo.
Maya Angelou, yeah. And she said, for example, we should even have compassion with a murderer because it's still a human being. And a human being did that action. And that's how far compassion can go. It's crazy to think of that, right? But it's true. That really shocked me. It was like, so it's like we have all of this like colors in us, all these emotions and everything. But you're making a really good point. As an actor, I'm having a higher awareness. So now I'm not just a character and not just expressing an emotion and just expressing a color of mine, but I also have my higher self in the back, which is navigating everything. So, which is deciding, for example, I'm going to raise my arms. So it's almost like I'm witnessing myself doing that. I'm also leading myself doing that. And I can make different decisions any second. And I'm only acting like this. So I never act without my actor's consciousness. And there's people who do that. They go in the character and that's more direction, or these psychological ones where you're just like in the thing, right? But in Chekhov that I studied, we train the actor's awareness. So we train to always be present, and think of it like this. I'm this presence, and then there's all these different pathways that I'm going and that I'm using, and techniques that I can dive into, or if I'm just flowing and it goes well. But I always feel my own presence, which helps me to, even when it's a deep dive, even when it's a deep journey, it's a heavy character, with a deep history or whatever, to stay present and to distinguish. This is the character, but I'm leading the game. I'm leading the show, right? Even if it's just by presence, because I need to be able to let things happen, which is so scary. True acting means I'm letting go, I'm letting things happen, I'm going into the character, and then the character's doing stuff, right? Kinda. So, but I'm still in charge. I'm able to stop any second. And it's very important for me to be able to be in this profession, because otherwise it would also, I have to say, really scare me, you know? Like, and that's also why I chose Chekhov, because I couldn't do the other approaches. Maybe I'm getting more able to do those. I'm not really know if I want to do those, because it's the most, Chekhov is the most spiritual aspect of for me, the most aware way of acting.
No, once you listed all these methods of acting, immediately thought, once you said, there's this one actor who is totally in the character, I thought immediately, okay, this has to be me, because I'm always, or most of the films I truly love, I think came from this. For example, Rocky, I think, is the embodiment of this way of acting, because he basically did everything. He wrote the whole thing. He planned everything out. He is the main character of the story. So yeah, this is one of my favorite films. So I got reminded of that. But you called it a color of me, and that reminded me of an experience I had in July in London, where a good friend of mine had a workshop, and there she described that there's this self inside of us who is more of a conductor than an instrument, and that we have all of these instruments. We can say play, we can say stop, that the self is always active, but having him or her as a conductor is a true mastery. And I think that you
Yes.
have
That's very beautiful. That's very beautiful. And when you go into, for example, I did shamanic clowning, and I did like trauma retreats and things like that. And it doesn't really, honestly, it doesn't stop at acting. But there's moments, and we all have experienced some of these moments, and some of us have been more aware of those and some less aware, where we're just kind of blanking out. And it's like we're going to sleep, but things happen and we do stuff. And then like 5 minutes later, this happened to me, for example, in shamanic clowning workshop. We did some kind of being back as a child, like non-verbal play, being like in the kindergarten. And I was so in it, I forgot that I am. So there was no higher presence or anything. I was just was. And then when he ended this, play, I was shocked. I was like, what the fuck just happened? I was deeply in a trance. I was deeply in my subconscious, which was beautiful. But the switch can be painful, it can be irritating, and it can cause problems. So that's why I'm saying we're training as actors, especially in Chekhov, this awareness. If you don't train the awareness in the play, that's when you're drifting. And that's when, in my opinion, you're really losing control, because all of the actors have to let go, also the Chekhov actors, but we're in awareness, we're still there because we're practicing that so much, right? So the deeper and the more the subconscious trusts, the deeper it lets go, and the deeper you dive, and the more, let's say, like expressive, crazy things you're doing, and the more the audience maybe loves it or finds it interesting, but it needs to be safe for you.
And one last question to acting. Is it easier to be acting than it is to create experiences in real life?
Because my life is a creation and acting is a creation. So when I'm acting, I'm putting in an amount of effort. I'm like, it's like you have a pallet of wood and you're burning it like you're on fire. I'm putting on a fire, and the fire should, by the way, always be burning. And the same when I'm living. But my way of living is out of comfort zone. I live in a different country. They speak a different language. I'm creating my life. I have my own company. So my way of living is very different, because many people live I'm not saying that I don't do that from time to time, but I live in a very automatized way, in a big comfort zone of life, right? So to an extent, they can never experience that. So what I have done, I would say, is take the acting further, also thanks to my coach, who said, what about you taking your acting, in your acting, and saying, I'm going to create in real life instead of always, having your life. And my life is pretty exciting, I would say. But then escaping to acting as like the experience, the thing. Wow, now I'm playing this character, and this character is going to a shopping mall and running and screaming in the shopping mall. How exciting. But how about I make my real life so exciting that I don't need to be acting? That I want to act, but I don't need to act. That was something that just stick with me from my coaching with my coach, where I was like, that's something that interests me right now, because I don't want to be one of those actors that's escaping their own life because it's maybe not livable, or it's not nice, it's not beautiful, it's not what they envisioned. I want to say I'm one of those actors who has a damn amazing life that many people will be jealous about, or I don't know, I don't care, but maybe that that I love. And I get to act, not the other way around. Wow, I play all these amazing roles, but as many actors, I can't even pay an apartment. I live in a one-room shared apartment and sit on my laptop the whole day trying to apply for jobs. It's like, that's not my life. That's not who I want to be.
And amazing conversation to the next thing I wanted to say. You said who I want to be, and being is something that we are both kind of connected with, because we both are in a very amazing group of, are there 18 or 19 people? I don't really know.
Know that.
But
Yeah,
let's call
but
it
yes to the group.
18 amazing human beings who are all connected under one word, which is being. So I would just like to ask what being is for you.
It's a constant exploration and research for me. But in one word, it's love. Because, love burns everything. Love burns all the judgment. Love burns all the borders. Love burns any hateful vision in your eyes. Love burns any blockages in your energies, in your field. It burns everything down. And you know that everything matters when you love. And the reason why we build the blockages is because loving so much is so painful that the ego and our system says we will not survive that. And then it starts to close off a lot of places so that we can survive, because the ego thinks that's our capacity. So what our calling really is as human beings is to expand in our love and expand in our capacity to hold pain, because loving is so painful.
No, I never thought about it from this perspective, but can you maybe expand a little bit on it? That how can love, such an amazing thing, be pain at the same time?
Well, now you're giving it to me, although you know it very well yourself, because I'm sure you have loved someone in your life. And, it's like when you love, and it really doesn't matter if you love a dog or you love the sunset or you love a person, you understand that you can never own that, right? Cannot own that person. The dog will die, the person will die, they will move away like your friend. So nothing is in control. So when you love, it creates this amazing feeling inside of you. But as soon as these things are taken away from you, it hurts so much. So then the brain does this like overprotective mechanism of saying like, I'm going to protect you of that potential thing to happen. Which is crazy. It's like, can we please stay present? But the pain mostly comes because people die. Animals die. The sunrise goes down and then it's dark. And then it's the next day, right? Love has to be experienced. And I think that it's a yes to life. It's a yes, I'm loving. Yes, I'm making myself vulnerable. Yes, I get my heart broken. But I can still choose how I love. I can still choose how I parent myself. What are my boundaries? That's why I'm saying choosing yourself is the only thing we really have, It's like setting some boundaries of the way who should be loving us. What is this person that you want to be loved by? What is their qualities? And no one ever, died from giving a pregnant woman a chair in the train. No one died from cuddling a dog that was really looking for it, in the train, but these things. So I'm constantly talking to my brain and telling myself it's okay to love and it's important to love. It's important to be present and vulnerable. Is it going to be comfortable? No. Am I going to be sometimes rejected? Yes. Is it my fault fault that I'm rejected? Not at all. It's the other person's protection mechanisms or their trouble to choose themselves. I don't know if this in any way answered what you were going to ask me.
No, but it's so amazing how you extended this, because it's funny that, I don't know, I think it was last week, I podcast someone who talked about exactly that. Embodying your being, embodying the way you are present. And she said that, okay, once you embody something and once you truly decide that you want to do something a certain way or be someone in a certain way, that no matter the reaction, you know that you did your best, and you know that everything can happen. You can be rejected, you can fail at it, but in your heart, in yourself, you know that it was the right thing. And I don't want to say that not a lot of people have this, but I think that a lot of people can train this, which I want to go back to you.
Yes,
So
absolutely. I
how
love
can
that you're
I?
saying this. I love that you're saying this. Yes, because I'm all for, I think that we can train that and we should. And the reason why it's not present right now, it's not so available, the skill of loving and the skill of being, is simply the way that society is turning, right? And it's like expecting us 9 to 5 and all these things that don't really suit our being. All these things in the system, right? So we're like the slaves of that. Let's make it a bit more dramatic. Otherwise, we would be these skills would be way more defined, right? If we wouldn't have phones, if we wouldn't have 9 to 5, all these things, many of the skills would be practiced naturally. So we can do some kind of prevention work or practicing and starting in the small, and I love that. But I'm also going to say, we all have to make a choice in life. What's the life I want to live? Who do I want to be? And when am I going to start doing that? So if you want to have a company, step out of the 9 to 5, do it tomorrow, right? If you want to love, go out and tell people, I want to love. Make yourself seen in that so you can be heard and received. If you want friends, then go out and, you know what I mean? It's like embody that you want and that you need. And also I'm always thinking of the traits. So when it comes to being, there's the question, who do I want to be? I think of the traits that I want to embody, the character traits that I want to embody. And then I go and be that. And every little thing I'm looking throughout the day and I'm seeing, oh, you know that I practice being on time, because I was like, I'm not on time in real life meetings. And it's a problem for me because that's the person I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go through that. And that's honestly really, really small steps, but it's beautiful. And that changes my being. It changes the way I choose myself, the way I love myself, changes my character. It's really hard work though, but it's worth it. And about being, you know, I'm also still like in the process because my nervous system shuts down and I don't really feel like I can be present to an amount that I want to be present. And that makes me very sad. But then instead of, as I did, disconnecting from my nervous system or judging it or saying like, I hate this part of me, I'm becoming curious and I'm like, okay, why in the specific situation that I really wanted to be present, is it so hard for my nervous system right now to open up? Like, what is the story, you know, from my childhood or whatever? Because presence for me in the end is love, and love is felt and love is beautiful and love is embodied. And we know when we're in our body and when we're open and when we're receptive and when we shut down. So awareness.
Yeah, awareness, that's the word that came up so much, and we already covered up so much of it.
Yeah.
But this love part is still something that I think I myself, and I think a lot of listeners also, struggle a lot with, because we often see things in life, feel things, and they all shape us in one way or another, that what we truly want is something that is so foggy, so uncertain, that we never do the steps in order to become this version of ourselves, to become a more loving person. We want it in some ways, but we never really decide, because there isn't this, I don't want to call it clarity, but in this case, I have to call it clarity. The clarity of who we are becoming, or who this version of ourselves who is loving looks like. So what would
Exactly.
you say
And I'm
to
going to
these
tell you that
people?
it's very simple. Most people don't sit down and do the work of asking themselves, what is my purpose? Why am I breathing? What is the history of my family line? What am I bringing into this world? How do I want to live? Do I want to have children? Many men, when I ask them, they're like, I don't know if I want to have children. I'm like, how can a 35-year-old man, 35, not know if they want to have children? That's a man that hasn't been sitting down on the table and put himself there, nailed himself there and said, I'm going to find a solution to that. I'm going to find an answer to that. I'm only going to stand up when I have this answer. So that's a very distracted man. And that's a man that's not embodying any values. And that's a man that has struggles to look in the mirror. Right? So for me, it was always clear, I don't want to be that person ever. I want to know. And if I don't know, I sit down and I find out and I know this is my answer today. If I lose my purpose, I say, okay, let's sit down again and let's answer it for today. What is my purpose? And I always find an answer. And I never, ever, if the answer I don't know comes up, I never settle for that. I would never, ever, that's a lie, and I'm not settling for that because there's something underneath. And most people settle for that. So the answer comes up in the brain, I don't know. Protection mechanism, right? Let's not go there. Last time you went there, you got hurt. When you were a child and you went there and someone asked you, what's your dream? And then you said, a firefighter, and then they started laughing. So let's not even go there. Let's just say, I don't know, because that's safe. No one can hurt you, right? Why playing these games with yourself? Why lying in this amount to yourself and wasting so much lifetime where there's so much to do? I mean, just with a bit of sight looking around all these bad things happening in the world, it's so easy for me to decide every day that I want to be of service and I want to be a good person. And it's so irritating for me if I would see myself doing really bad habits, no matter what that is, right? For men, that's like watching porn, and for women, that can be something else, maybe phone addiction or whatever. But why wouldn't I want to give that up immediately and change that and say, I'm not gonna let go until this is fixed because that's not the person that I want to be? I don't understand it. But maybe, maybe there's something that has been given to me that others didn't have. And I'm not saying that I never do mistakes and I'm not perfect at all. But if I find these dark spots about myself, I go and I find a solution, right? And I solve them and I repair them, one after the other.
I often say after a call that I have one thing I will take away from the call. And if there's anything in the call, I think that this was the thing that I will genuinely take away and genuinely practice in life, because I have a rough direction. I know it. I know where I'm heading. Otherwise, I could never, ever podcast so many amazing people and create so many great connections in life and be the person I am today. But this always sitting down and writing it down, I always thought about, okay, I will have this one thought, this one purpose forever in my life. But this was never the case. It always shifted so much. But I always had the thought of, if I'm not 100% sure what I want, then I don't even want to think about it. And I think that the input you gave me right now of sitting down and finding the answer, rabbit holing your thoughts, rabbit holing your brain, I think that this will genuinely be the one thing that will shift my being.
That's beautiful. And that's basically a strictness with yourself, not accepting less, not accepting being weak, not accepting being one of those that doesn't know. And it's like a form, a shape that you give your being, and you say, that's who we're gonna be. And then your being adapts to that. So that's your inner leadership, that's self-leadership. And that's something that we have to put on ourselves. And we have to say, this is who I want to be, and that's my strictness, and I'm not accepting anything less. I'm not standing up from the table until I have the answer to that. And I promise you it's going to take you 5 minutes. And then you're going to laugh. You're going to be like, oh my God, my life so far was a joke. I thought it's going to take me an hour. And now after 5 minutes, I have my life purpose. That's the ridiculous part of it. It's just sitting down and thinking and making that decision and let's go, rock and roll. fall, fail, welcome to the journey.
Talk I ever had this.
I think it's good to continue because you have so much already. And I think there's a lot for everyone to find in this because we crossed a lot of different topics. But it's an amazing compliment, of course, to receive. And I'm happy that my thoughts could inspire you. And my thoughts are also a product of my actions and of my being. And that just shows me that I'm on the right path, and that it resonates with you shows you that you're on the right path because you're resonating with these thoughts. Because in the end, thinking is a frequency. It's an energetic frequency. So then sometimes we can't even verbalize where it is we want to go and what our purpose is, but we're drawn to thoughts of people, or we're drawn to a coach or a person. Why are we drawn to them? Because we're drawn to their energetic field, because that's where we want to go. And then we just need to trust them. Do you in my energetic field?
Oh no, just what you described right now. That energy, and that once a person comes to a person, they feel the energy and they want to be in this energy. Now I genuinely want to be in your energy.
Think my
How would
thoughts.
this look like?
And become aware of my energetics around me, like become aware of my presence, because although we're sitting here and it's online, I'm present, I'm alive, I'm breathing, I have a heartbeat. And it's just you remembering that. Remembrance is a form of presence, but remembering is also.
So I will then go through this talk a few times and receive the energy.
Yes. And by
And think about
talking,
it.
we're also connected. And by thinking about the same topics, we're sharing consciousness. So it's as simple as that. And I think if, the more you understand that and the more you can see that and honor that, then every time you're going to have a conversation with someone, also in the train or somewhere else, you're going to be so grateful because you understand, whoa, we just shared consciousness. And we didn't touch and nothing happened, in that physical sense, but we shared consciousness.
No, genuinely, I would say that I'm speechless, but it was just so amazing, and you gave so many amazing answers. And I genuinely have nothing more to add. So is there anything you want to add?
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to see it. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Bye.
Bye.